Hey guys, today's video is going to be something similar that I made a while ago, which is pretty much going to be tips, but this time we're gonna make the tips to Battlefield 6. I decided to make this video since the last video, which was pretty much the same but from Delta Force, has got pretty positive feedback. I was like, okay, why not to continue with that? I will try to give you a tips that actually I think are useful. They're kind of no BS as well, and that's not going to involve things such as just get better gun or in general just get better. So without further ado, let's move to the video. First of all, I think the most important setting in general will be your sensitivity. Comparing to Delta Force, I'm actually using a little bit of the lower sensitivity. I think in Delta Force my 360 sensitivity was around 22-23 centimeters. And this is what I initially was playing in Battlefield 6, but I think this game requires a little bit more of the precision, especially since the guns have the extra spread. And I find it more difficult to aim in general in this game, so I definitely would encourage you to try a little bit of the lower sensitivity. It doesn't have to be as low as mine, unless you feel comfortable with that, but it can be even lower, but definitely it's surely your preference. Also because I switched from cloth pad to glass pad, I think the lower sensitivity is actually better for me, but like I said, it's definitely up to your preference. I think something around 30 centimeters per 360 is going to be pretty much the most optimum value. Another thing I would like to talk is the resolution that you play on. I mainly play on 16:10. You're gonna see in the video that I use different resolutions anyways, but that was pretty much because I was testing. I find myself to be performing the best at 4:3, but I think I was lacking a little bit of the visibility, and 16:10 is also what I've been using pretty much in all of the games like Rainbow Six or even Counter-Strike, so that's what I am used to, and I think this is what works the best for me. I would encourage you to try playing with that a little bit, since I think shooters are pretty much the games where you want to perform well. You don't really want them to look good unless you play some single player, then yeah, just go ahead. But I think you should be trying to extract every single possible advantage over your enemy. For the graphics settings, in general, I think the two most important things are the anti-aliasing. I would say either use nothing, such like for the anti-aliasing, or you can use the DLSS or FSR4. Any other upscaling methods will pretty much result in blurry image, and this is definitely not what you wanna see. And I would also say avoid TAA, because this is like the worst thing that you can have in any game. For the graphics settings, I set everything to the low pretty much, as you can see. One thing that you might try to experiment with is the mesh quality. This setting has been pretty much used in every single Battlefield to improve the model visibility. However, in this game, I think it makes no difference at all, at least on my resolution that I play on, but maybe if you play in 4K or something or lower resolution, I have no clue. That might be actually the one that you wanna use and try to play with a little bit. It reduces FPS pretty much by nothing, and maybe it's going to give a little bit better visibility of the enemies, so this is pretty much up to you. I've heard a myth, but I cannot really confirm that, but I've heard this option can affect the footsteps, but I don't know if it's the audio or the actual visibility or whatever, so I will just say this one you can also try to play a little bit, but like I said, I just set everything to the low as a rule of thumb. So the reason is pretty much you wanna have the best visibility as possible, and you don't really give a shit about the game looking pretty. You definitely want to win as many gunfights as you want. That's probably why you also click the video. The two more important things I would say is make sure that you disable all of the motion blur and camera shake, because this is pretty much what you don't want to use. And in the accessibility tab, make sure that you disable those two options to the lowest, because you don't really want any annoying sounds when you get flashed. You wanna be sure that you hear as quick as you can or once the effect is over. The rest of the settings I would say are probably your preference. I would say there is nothing in particular other than what I mentioned that you should be using. So this is purely going to be your own personal preference, how you set up the game, how you set the colors and so on. I haven't changed the much except for the basics that I always change, which is like the graphics, the sensitivity, and maybe some audio stuff. Also, speaking of the audio, this one isn't necessary to be changed, but for me, the combination of headphones and night mode works the best, since the night mode kind of reduces the amount of sounds that you're going to hear, so I think it's a little bit easier to hear footsteps as well. So this is what you can try to change, depending on your preference and your headset. Okay, so we are done with the settings, so what goes next? Well, in my opinion, you should definitely consider how you approach your game. Definitely, face tanking all of the enemies that you're gonna see is not the option. This is not the type of shooter where you want to fight against 1 versus like 5 people at the same time because you will simply die. Similarly to Delta Force, you wanna try to find as many flanks as you can. Actually in this game it's even easier because the minimap shows you even bigger part of the map, so you can read the information and predict where the enemies are gonna be. However, in this game I find it much more difficult because more and more people actually play with the snipers, which I think is a little bit annoying, and I really hope that there will be a sniper limit. Anyways, another thing that you should really pay attention to is pretty much what type of gun you are gonna use. I would say the guns in Battlefield 6 are pretty well balanced, however I think some of them will be outperforming others. I'm mainly talking about the SMGs in this game because I think currently those guns are very strong, and in my opinion ARs kind of make no sense actually to be used. The Carabine class is also pretty good. I would say especially the M4, which you can get for level 2, which is like what, 5 minutes of playing. This gun can pretty much melt you down instantly. It has pretty low recoil I would say, but it has quite a bit of the spread, so this is definitely one of the best starter guns you can use. Okay, you might ask me why am I even mentioning the guns. I mentioned the guns because you should really pay attention to what the age of the attachments do. So for example, if you go to the barrels, you're gonna see plenty of them. Actually, I think the only ones that you should really consider using are the suppressors, because then you're pretty much gonna hide yourself from the minimap. And the spotting range that you can be spotted at is, I think, 17 meters. And the flash hider, which is also going to decrease the distance that you can be spotted on the minimap, but I think the distance is gonna be around 40 meters. Why am I mentioning these two specifically? Well, those two are going to pretty much hide you from the 3D ping, which is like, when somebody presses the Q on the keyboard, then you pretty much get spotted and they can see you through the wall and everything. So that's pretty much what's happening as well when you shoot without flash hider or suppressor. So I think this is definitely those two attachments you should be consider using. You might say that the recoil might be huge, but you get compensated with the grip most of the time. For the barrel, I would say mostly your preference, but for SMGs, for example, I like running the extended barrel because of the velocity. Some of you might want to go for the short barrel because of the hip fire. If you make the gun for the hip fire, that's completely fine. I've played with the M4 that was hip fire focused, and I can't really complain on that, so this is definitely more of your preference. There is not really a bad choice, but I would say if you have an option, just go for the heavy barrel because it gives you like no drawbacks, but you also get the precision, and precision is pretty much the key in this game. For the grip, I think this is where pretty much the fun starts. So as you can see, for example, my grips gives me a slightly faster transition to ADS, which you can see it's 133 milliseconds over here, but it also says at the cost of ADS accuracy while moving. So what that pretty much means, if your gun has already pretty high spread, you should never use the grip that's going to give you the penalty for the ADS accuracy. For example, this grip, as you can see, the grip for 35 pounds, it's going to reduce quite a bit of the recoil, but at the cost of the ADS. So the question now is, do we really need to lose the precision if our gun already sucks at that? I mean, I'm using the SMG as an example here, so I don't really need precision because I expect my fights to be maybe like up to 20-30 meters, and usually that's where the SMG is just going to outperform. But what you can do instead is you can go for the grip that costs you 20. It's going to reduce the recoil, but it gives you pretty much no penalty or anything. There's also another grip, as you can see, that's going to cost you a little bit of the ADS. It's going to still reduce even more. So this one is pretty much up to you, but I would say personally try to avoid the grips that give you the ADS penalty, unless you know the gun is somewhat precise but lacks control. So maybe M4, I would say, can be one of these guns where you can actually use that type of grip. For the mech, I would say kind of no preference. As you can see, they reduce a little bit of the mobility at the cost of the reload time, so this is more of your preference. I can tell you that it stacks up pretty nicely with the attachment on the stock that allows you to reload pretty quick, so you can make the MP5 reload of around 2 seconds, which is pretty nice. The ammunition, usually I just play with the standard. I don't really bother to be playing with something else. This ammunition, the hollow point, can be pretty useful, but mainly for the ARs, because I think the difference from 0.34 to 0.5, it's not really a big difference. I think the ARs have actually the bigger ratio here. Optics is again your personal preference. However, I would say 1 times, because this is pretty much the same sensitivity between ADS and hipfire, and this is what I've been using in Delta Force as well, so I don't really think that I should be changing this one. The lasers are quite interesting because each laser is going to give you different results. In my opinion, the safest bet would be to use the red laser, since this one is invisible to your enemies. The green laser is pretty fine, but if you get a chance, I would just use the blue laser at this point, because it's pretty much gonna give you the same penalty to the visibility. but you also get extra mobility. I mean, it costs you 10 extra points, but for the SMGs, I kind of struggle to max out all of the points, to be honest. You can try using that one for even more hipfire accuracy, but this one I think is a little bit too much when it comes to the points, and we're still gonna need a little bit of them. I would even say that it's better, for example, to do this laser, and then we can go for the suppressor that costs 30. And the result is going to be pretty much the same. You can see 95 points, it's the same. So it doesn't really matter. Up to you what you're gonna use. Also, we have a flashlight usually as our gadget that we can use on the right rail. This one, I think, can be annoying, but sometimes can get you killed in some dark room. I've died plenty of times, but I think usually it's going to be more useful rather than annoying, because flashlight is actually strong in this game. The flashlight is pretty strong, especially against PC players who cannot aim lock at you just behind the light, so I think this one is actually worth consider using, because it kind of gives you no penalty, but apparently also gives you the hipfire accuracy. So as you can see, there is so many options of how you can build a gun, and honestly, you can't really go wrong with it. I'm not going to show you every single class. I might make a dedicated video if you want me to make one about how to build the guns properly once I get a little bit more knowledgeable about that, because I still think I need to educate myself a little bit on that. But this is pretty much the basics that you need to know on how to build your guns. So to sum it up, try to avoid grips that give you penalty ADS unless it's necessary for the extra control. My main focus would be probably mobility and ADS time, especially on the LMGs, but usually ADS time is short enough that you're not really going to need it. And in my opinion, the hipfire accuracy is pretty underrated, and it can be really handy on the maps such as Empire State, so I would really say it's also worth consider stacking up that one a little bit. Okay, so far we know that the flagging is essentially the key to get plenty of the kills, as well as we know that the gun that you use is pretty important as well, but the way that you build it also matters. But in my opinion, the most important aspect of the game is pretty much playing the game. Because how do you wanna get better without playing the game? Like, surely you can watch plenty of the gameplay on Twitch or YouTube, but you are not really going to get better just from watching. Like, you can probably see how the game flow works, or you can, for example, see how you can flank, but you just gotta feel that yourself, because you cannot simply just do the flank. You need to get the timing, you need to find the opportunity how to do so, you need to find the gap in an enemy's defense. So yeah, that's pretty much plenty of things to learn, and since the game is pretty fresh, there is really nobody that's like a pro player or whatever. I mean, they're obviously better players, but everyone is still learning after all. So I think just because the game is pretty new, that's also a good opportunity for you to learn, as well as you can just simply get better over time. And if you actually put the effort and realize what kind of mistakes you make, then you might actually be improving much faster than the others. I wouldn't really say that the VOD analyzes are the things that you should do in this game, because that's not as much competitive title as, I don't know, Valorant, Counter-Strike. It could be useful, however, if you wanna find some of your aiming weaknesses. Like, for example, I know that I really need to work on the tracking at the short distances, especially the targets that move pretty slowly, but I know that my target switching is pretty fine, especially when it's at around 20 meters, so I don't really have problems with that one. This is one of the weaknesses I found out from making all of the clips that you can see in the background. It really helps me like analyze some of my mistakes, so definitely it's worth to just try and record your clips, and once you show them to your friends or whatever, you can just see, oh, maybe I could have done it better, you know, something like that. You're always going to find something to improve on. Like, you can never be like the perfection in any game. The last tip for today's video that I want to give is pretty much place wisely, not hard. So what I mean by saying that is try to think of how you can like outsmart your enemies. Like I mentioned before that face tanking isn't the option, so flanking is obviously one of them. But it's not like the only option that you always have to play from behind. What you can try to do, for example, is you can try to find a head leech spot, which is pretty much the spot where you only expose your head. Or you can just try to take the gunfights one by one, so you don't pick 3 enemies at once, so you actually have a chance of winning that. In general, there is so many nuances you can learn about the... Kurwa. In general, there are so many nuances you can learn about the game, and since the game will be developed pretty much constantly, unlike Delta Force, I think there will be still constantly new things to learn, new weapons to adapt and grind. So I would say try to build your fundamentals around the gameplay and progress as the game progresses. That's, I think, the best advice I can give you. If you think you are currently better at the game, just don't worry, like take your time, you know, maybe it's your first shooter ever, maybe you're new to the shooters in general, you don't really have developed mechanics or anything, so just take your time. Sometimes you are going to have very bad KD ratio like 0.5, sometimes it's just gonna be like, I don't know, 5.0 plus, you know. It really depends on the game that you get on the day. It really depends who you play against. Maybe playing with friends is also going to help. Like I said, there is so many factors that can contribute to your individual performance. So just keep playing, enjoy the game, and you're just gonna get better over time. And that will be it in this video. I hope it's somewhat useful, and for now, I will make a little bit of the announcement. I am definitely quitting making Delta Force videos unless there will be some big patch to analyze something, but it doesn't really seem so. There was apparently some mid-patch that you could find, but they changed pretty much nothing. They nerfed Luna a little bit, but that's it. But I don't really think that's something I wanna make a full video about. In my opinion, the Battlefield mod in Delta Force is dead, and since the Battlefield 6 is pretty much the main game right now, well, I would just say there is not a single reason for me to play Delta Force, the game that's pretty much that includes skill-based matchmaking. I just wanna enjoy something new, something where I consider as a casual shooter where I don't have to sweat my ass off to perform well. I wanna play the game where I don't have to wait like 30 minutes to get matched to the game, so that's pretty much the reason there will be no more Delta Force videos. So I really hope that you understand, and thank you for everyone who stayed till the end and wanted to listen to that little announcement. And now I wish you a great day and see you in the next video.